Will the next climate bill include cap and trade? New reports say lawmakers are preparing to scrap it. It is deadline day for Cape Wind. We'll see whether Interior Secretary Ken Salazar will need to step in. And Al Gore stands by the IPCC despite the errors uncovered in its landmark climate report.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Good morning, I'm Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for the Energy Report on this first day of March 2010. 3 senators appear ready to release details this week of new compromise energy and climate legislation. The Washington Post says Senators Kerry, Graham, and Lieberman are crafting a radical overhaul of climate legislation and are ready to scrap a cap and trade approach. It calls this a sharp change of direction and says it illustrates just how much a cap and trade strategy has become political poison. The Post cites a meeting with environmental leaders where Graham actually said cap and trade is dead, but it also quotes Lieberman as saying in an interview that they haven't abandoned the market-based approach but are willing to negotiate. In their quest for an alternative, the new proposal would apply different approaches to limiting carbon for different sectors. It says power plants would face an overall cap, transportation fuel could get a carbon tax, and industrial facilities could be exempt from a cap for several years. Energy analyst Christine Tezak at Robert W. Baird & Company says this sector-by-sector approach will start with a cap-and-trade program for electric utilities. It would also reportedly expand offshore drilling and give federal assistance for new nuclear plants and CCS at coal-fired utilities. While the White House continues to push for a broad bill covering energy and climate, many say a largely different bill will be tough to pass and prefer narrower legislation as more likely. Interior Secretary Ken Salazar is due to announce the next steps for the Cape Wind project sometime today. Developer Jim Gordon's $2.6 billion proposal calls for 130 turbines on a 25-mile stretch of federal waters between Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard. Native American tribes in the area say the turbines would interfere with religious ceremonies that call for an unobstructed view of the sunrise. The tribes have rejected an offer of $1 million, money that a project spokesman says was offered as financial mitigation. Salazar told Clean Skies News he is prepared to move forward.
If I terminate the consultation process, it then goes over to the Advisory Board on Historic Preservation, and they'll get back to me within 45 days on what their input is, and then I will move forward to a final decision. So I expect to have a final decision on the Cape Wind application by mid-April.
While the search is on for a replacement for UN Climate Chief Evo de Boer, the Jakarta Post reports the Indonesian government expressed interest at last week's Environment Minister meeting in Bali in submitting at least 2 people for the position. One is Liana Bratasida, former member of the Clean Development Mechanism, elected to chair the subsidiary body for implementation to discuss crucial issues, including the emission cut target, financing, mitigation, and technology transfers at the Bonn meeting last year. De Boer steps down in July. India has also said that it's starting plans for a run at that position. Former Vice President Al Gore is firing back at global warming skeptics and defending the UN report that brought climate change to the world's attention. Gore and the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change shared the Nobel Peace Prize for the 2007 report. But now skeptics are pointing to recently discovered errors in the report, saying they discredit the idea of human-caused climate change. But in an op-ed piece in Sunday's New York Times, Gore writes that the danger remains real. He writes, quote, "The reality of the danger we are courting has not been changed by the discovery of at least 2 mistakes in the thousands of pages of careful scientific work over the last 22 years by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The scientific enterprise will never be completely free of mistakes. What is important is that the overwhelming consensus on global warming remains unchanged." The UN announced last week that an independent scientific board would review the IPCC's work. Gore also blamed U.S. lawmakers for the failure of a binding climate deal in Copenhagen, saying the world needed U.S. leadership and the Senate did not act in time. China is preparing details on its greenhouse gas emissions goals and monitoring rules. Government officials say their next 5-year plan will spell out the country's plans for regions and sectors, with monitoring to show it's serious about curbing emissions. The Chinese government has said it would cut carbon dioxide emissions relative to the country's GDP over the next 10 years, 40 to 50% from 2005 levels. But U.S. officials were disappointed that the move was voluntary and not part of a binding deal. Chinese officials now tell state media they will enact a monitoring system to be sure the emissions goals are met. The last official inventory of emissions from China was submitted to UN agency in 2004. The data was from 1994. Well, despite sliding prices, natural gas producers continue to drill more wells. Baker Hughes says the number of drilling rigs looking for natural gas onshore in the U.S. rose by 12 last week to 905 rigs. This is the highest number in more than a year. This as the price of natural gas is down 14% so far this year. The increased drilling is keeping production high, bucking a trend that some analysts had predicted. Drilling in unconventional shale gas plays could be the reason. According to a study by IHS Herald, this could drive the rig count even higher in the coming months, and the big independents do plan to spend about 22% more on capital projects this year. Right now, Henry Hub natural gas is trading at $4.77 per thousand cubic feet, down about 3 cents. There's benchmark crude trading at $80.32 a barrel on the NYMEX, up 66 cents. Well, here's what's going on in energy around the Beltway today. 8 a.m. the Energy Business Leadership Forum kicks off. Day one of a two-day conference. It's at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. Clean Skies News will be there. At 5:30, SAIS holds a forum on China's international petroleum policy. And of course, we'll have the latest on any decision out of the Interior Department on the Cape Wind project. That is the Energy Report. Thanks for joining us here in the Energy News Center. For any suggestions or comments about our programming here on Clean Skies News, we want to hear from you. You can email us at contact@cleanskies.com, and you can also follow us, of course, on Twitter and Facebook, too. I'm Susan McGinnis. You're watching Clean Skies News.